I was not afraid that I would forget my husband all at once. I was afraid it would happen slowly, one little detail at a time. The way he said my name, the sound of his shoes on the kitchen floor, the small cough he made before answering the phone. And then one morning I played an old voice message from Michael and realized I could not remember how he had finished the sentence. That was when I asked Jesus the question I had been carrying for years. Where are our loved ones now? Do they remember us? And when we see them again, will we know them? I did not expect an answer. I certainly did not expect Jesus to show me something about heaven that would change the way I looked at death, memory, and the people still sitting beside me here on earth. But before I tell you what happened, I want to say something. If you have lost someone, you may understand why I was afraid to ask that question. Maybe there is a name you still say quietly when nobody is around. Maybe you have a picture on your phone that you cannot delete. Maybe you have kept one shirt, one voicemail, one chair, one recipe, not because you think the person will walk back through the door, but because throwing it away feels like throwing away the last little piece of them. I know that feeling. My name is Sarah. I'm 58 years old, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I have been married twice, although I do not usually say it that way. Michael was my husband. My first marriage ended long before I met him, and that is a whole different story. Michael died 3 years ago. My mother, Ruth, died before that. And my younger brother, Thomas, has been gone even longer. I used to think I had accepted all of it. I had gone to the funerals, signed the papers, and cleaned out closets. When people asked, "How are you doing?" I gave them the answer they were looking for. I'm doing okay. The truth is I wasn't. The morning it happened was not special. There was no music, no strange light coming through the window. Nothing that would make you say, something important is about to happen. It was raining and my kitchen was cold because I had forgotten to turn the heat up before bed. The clock said 5:47 a.m. I remember that because I looked at it twice. I had been awake for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling and listening to the rain hit the window. Michael's side of the bed was empty. Of course it was empty. It had been empty for 3 years, but my hand still moved across the mattress before I was fully awake. It went toward his pillow, then stopped. I sat there for a moment. "Not today," I whispered. I don't know what I meant by that. Not today I won't cry. Not today I won't think about him. I honestly don't know. I got up and went to the kitchen. The old coffee maker made that clicking sound it always made before starting. I poured water into the back and reached for 2 mugs. I caught myself with the second mug in my hand. Michael's mug had a crack near the handle. I had asked him to throw it away probably 20 times. He always said, "It still holds coffee." That was his answer to almost everything. I put the mug back in the cabinet, then I took it out again. I know, it makes no sense. I filled it anyway. While the coffee was dripping, I opened the top drawer beside the refrigerator. That drawer was full of things I never used but could not throw away: rubber bands, takeout menus, a dead flashlight, 3 pens that did not work, and Michael's old phone. I had charged it the night before. Again, I'm not sure why. The screen came on at 11%. The wallpaper was a picture of us at the lake. Michael was looking away from the camera because he hated pictures. I was laughing at him, which is probably why he took it in the first place. I opened the voice recordings. There were 7. One was Michael talking to our dog. One was him reminding me to buy light bulbs. Another had been recorded by accident in the garage, and all I could hear was a lawnmower running in the background. I pressed play on the light bulb recording. His voice came through the tiny speaker. "Sarah, did you move the recording stopped?" I smiled at first. I thought keys, then I thought jacket, then maybe the remote. I played it again. "Sarah, did you move that was all." I sat down at the kitchen table. I had lived with that man for 29 years. I knew his voice better than I knew my own, but I could not remember the end of that sentence. I played it a third time. The phone made a little click before the recording started. Click, his voice, silence. On the fourth time, I pressed stop. No, I said, I don't know who I was talking to. Maybe I was talking to time. Maybe I was talking to the part of myself that was already preparing to lose him again. I picked up a piece of paper from beside the toaster and started writing down everything I could remember about Michael's voice. It was lower in the morning. He cleared his throat before answering the phone. He said well when he was about to disagree with me. No, maybe it was now. I stopped writing. I looked at the paper, then crossed out the sentence. That was the first time I said it out loud. I'm forgetting him. The coffee maker clicked off. The toast popped up, burned on one side. I had forgotten it again. I stood there with a piece of toast in my hand and started crying. Not the quiet kind. I tried to keep it quiet, but it came out as this ugly, broken sound. I put the toast down. Then I picked up Michael's blue shirt from the back of the kitchen chair. It had been washed weeks earlier. I kept telling myself I would put it away. I pressed it against my face. It did not smell like him anymore. I wanted it to. That is the embarrassing part. I wanted one more thing to prove that the past had not moved farther away while I was asleep. I sat on the floor with the shirt in my lap, and suddenly my question changed. It was no longer only, where is Michael? It became, if I am already forgetting parts of him here, will I recognize him there? That question scared me more than I can explain. The worst part was not only losing Michael's presence, it was losing the details that made him himself, the way he tilted his head, raised one eyebrow, or said my name when he wanted me to stop arguing. Then I doubted myself. Was it his left eyebrow or his right? I actually asked the bathroom mirror, "Come on, Sarah." That did not help. I went back to the table and saw my Bible underneath the phone. It was open to John chapter 11. I had underlined the words years ago, I am the resurrection and the life. I had heard that verse at funerals and seen it printed on cards beside smiling people in gardens. But that morning it felt different. I put my finger on the page. I know the words, I said, I just don't know what to do with them. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding. Jesus, if they are with you, do they remember me? Nothing happened. The rain kept tapping the window. The heater clicked on. The coffee in Michael's mug went cold. I did not hear a voice. I did not see anyone. I only sat there with one hand on the Bible and the other hand holding a phone that had 11% battery left. I had not received an answer, but I had finally admitted what I was afraid of. Maybe my memories were not strong enough to hold on to him. That afternoon, I drove to church. I almost turned around twice. The first time was at the stop sign near my neighborhood. The second time was when I saw the empty parking lot. I thought, what am I doing here? It's not Sunday. I parked anyway. The church office was closed, but I knew Linda would be there. Linda had lost her husband the year before. She was the kind of person who always carried peppermints in her purse and apologized when she cried. I found her in the small meeting room near the back hallway. She was sorting prayer cards into piles. She looked up. "You look tired," she said. I almost gave her my usual answer. "I'm fine." Instead, I said, "I'm not." That was all. She nodded like she had been waiting for me to say it. I told her about the voice message. I told her I could not remember the end of the sentence. I told her I felt foolish because it was such a small thing. Linda put the prayer cards down. "Sarah, it's not a small thing to you." I looked at the floor. No, it isn't. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The hallway outside was quiet, except for the vending machine humming near the entrance. Then Linda said, "You know Psalm 34:18. I did know it. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." I said the words with her. But I stopped at the end. I had read that verse many times. I believed it was true. I just did not know what close was supposed to feel like when the person I loved was no longer sitting across from me. Linda did not try to solve that. She did not tell me to move on. She did not tell me that everything happened for a reason. She pushed a peppermint across the table. I took it even though I don't like peppermints. That was when I realized something about Jesus that I had missed. He was not asking me to become less honest so I could look more faithful. He was not waiting for me to clean up my grief before coming near. Maybe the first message was not about heaven at all. Maybe it was this: I could bring the whole question to him. The anger, the fear, the part of me that wanted proof. The part that did not want to hear an answer unless it was the answer I had already chosen. Linda reached for another card. "Don't make yourself say more than you can say today," she told me. I nodded. On the drive home, I kept thinking about that. I had spent 3 years trying to sound strong when I prayed. That night, I decided not to sound strong. I put Michael's phone, my Bible, and the prayer notebook on the kitchen table. In the notebook, I found 3 names written on the first page. Michael Ruth Thomas. The ink under Thomas's name was blurred. I must have cried on the page sometime, but I did not remember doing it. I picked up the pen. Under the 3 names I wrote, "Jesus, where are they?" Then I added, "Do they remember me?" I stared at the words for a long time. I almost closed the notebook. But here's what I did not expect. The next line came out before I could stop it. "If you are the answer, help me hear you without turning you into the answer I want." I did not know where that prayer came from. I only knew it was honest. And that night, for the first time, I asked Jesus to answer me without telling him what the answer had to be. I did not sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the voice message again. "Sarah, did you move around 2 in the morning? I got up and searched my phone. Do people remember each other in heaven? Will I recognize my husband? Where are loved ones before the resurrection?" One answer said we would remember everything. Another said we would remember nothing. Both sounded certain about things I had never seen in the Bible. Fear makes you collect answers even when they make you more afraid. I wanted a map. I wanted someone to point to a verse and say, "Here, this is exactly where Michael is. This is exactly what he remembers. This is exactly what you will see." But the Bible is not a map I can unfold on the kitchen table. I know that now. At the time I was frustrated, I opened to John 14. Jesus says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." Then he speaks about preparing a place. I read that part slowly. A place, that word mattered to me. I could not picture that place without borrowing images from paintings and movies. But the point was not a detailed map. Jesus was telling his disciples not to let fear have the final word. I put the phone on the bed. But what about my question? I said, "The room was quiet. What about whether he remembers me?" I waited, which sounds ridiculous when I say it now. I sat there looking at the dark doorway as if someone might answer from the hall. Nobody did. Still, the question had changed again. At first, I wanted information about Michael. Now I was starting to see that I wanted information I could control. That was hard to admit. I wanted Jesus to give me enough details that I would never have to be afraid again. But faith does not work like a security camera. I'm sorry. That sounds like something from a sermon. I don't mean it that way. I mean, I wanted proof. I wanted a picture. I wanted something I could save to my phone and look at whenever grief came back. Instead, I had a verse, a cold room, and a question I still could not answer. The next morning, I drove to a coffee shop near the church. I almost went home when I saw a young couple sitting at the table where Michael and I used to sit. It was not even our table. It was just a table by the window. But I had always liked that one. Michael used to sit with his back to the wall. He said he liked to see the door. I used to tease him about it. You think someone is going to attack us while we eat a muffin? I asked him once. He said, "You never know." That was Michael. Always serious for about 3 seconds, then he would smile. I stood near the entrance holding my purse. The young couple looked up and I realized I was blocking the way. "Sorry," I said, "I'm sorry." I left. In the car, I cried harder than I had inside the coffee shop. It was not really about the table. It was about the fact that other people were still making new memories while mine had stopped. I drove to church instead. The sanctuary was empty. The lights were off except for the little lamp near the front. I sat in the last row because I did not want to feel watched, even though nobody was there. I opened my Bible to John 11, "I am the resurrection and the life." I whispered it, then I whispered it again. I had heard those words at Michael's funeral. I had heard them from the pastor. I had heard them from people who came to hug me and did not know what else to say. For 3 years, I had treated the words like a sign pointing toward a distant day. That morning, I wondered if Jesus meant them to hold me right there in that empty church before I had answers. I put the Bible on the seat beside me. "I don't need a beautiful sentence," I said. My voice sounded strange in the empty room. "I need to know what to do with tomorrow morning." I waited. Then I added, "I want to believe. I'm just not sure I know how to do that without seeing something." The church heater came on with a low roar. I laughed once because it startled me. Then I covered my face. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't even know what I'm saying." That was the truth. I did not leave church with a miracle. I left with the same questions, but one line stayed with me. Jesus did not say he had information about resurrection. He said he was the resurrection and the life. That night, I placed the cracked coffee mug beside the old phone. Then I prayed again. This time, I did not ask for a map. I said, "Jesus, if you are really the resurrection and the life, then meet me in this question." I don't know how to carry it anymore. I said it once. Then I stopped. I nearly walked away, but the phone screen lit up. There was no notification. The battery still said 11%. The voice recording started by itself. "Sarah, did you move my..." The sentence stopped, and then I heard something behind the recording. A chair moved across the floor, not loudly, just enough for me to hear it. I turned around. The kitchen was empty. The next part still does not make perfect sense to me. I was tired. The rain was tapping the kitchen window, and I had not slept well. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was a deep prayer experience. I cannot prove it to you, and I will not pretend that I can. But I know what I experienced. There was no choir and no sky opening above the house. The light over the sink flickered once. Then I heard a voice say my name. "Sarah." It was not loud. It did not sound like someone standing across the room. It sounded close, closer than the phone, closer than my own thoughts. I gripped the edge of the table. "Jesus," I almost said it like a question. I did say it like a question. There was a pause. Then, "You want me to show you where they are?" I began to cry. Yes, my hand was shaking so badly that I knocked the pen off the table. It rolled under the chair, and for some reason I kept watching it instead of looking up. I said, "Are they with you? Do they remember me? Will I know them?" The words came out too fast. I had waited years, and suddenly I wanted every answer in one breath. Then Jesus said, "You want me to prove that love is still there." I could not speak, because that was exactly what I wanted. Not a sermon, not a promise printed on a card, proof. I looked at the phone. The screen had gone dark. Then Jesus said, "Start with me." That was it. 3 words. Start with me. I remember thinking, that is not the answer I came for. And then I felt ashamed for thinking that. But Jesus did not disappear. He did not become angry. He let the silence sit there. The strange thing is, I started noticing the kitchen again. The scratch on the table, the coffee stain near the salt shaker, the damp sleeve of my sweater against my wrist. Nothing had been erased. I was still in my house. I was still Sarah. but I did not feel alone in the question anymore. Jesus said, "You are asking me for a map of heaven. I am asking you where you have placed your hope." I wanted to argue. I really did. I wanted to say, that is not fair. I already believe in you. But belief had become something I used to hide behind. I said the right words, then panicked when the house got quiet. So I said, "I don't know." Jesus answered, "You do not have to know everything tonight." I put both hands over my face. I'm afraid I'm forgetting them. I know. Then tell me they remember me. There was another pause, not the kind of pause people use when they are preparing a clever answer. It felt more like I was being allowed to hear the question underneath my question. Then Jesus said, "What is held in God is not lost." I understood it this way. I did not have to keep Michael alive by remembering every detail perfectly. I did not have to hold the whole relationship together with my tired mind. Jesus was not asking me to forget him. He was asking me to stop believing that forgetting one detail meant love had disappeared. Then I looked behind me. There were 3 chairs around the table. I know there had only been 2 before, mine and the one Michael used when he came into the kitchen. The 3rd chair was the wooden chair from my mother's old dining room set. I had given it away years earlier. I could see the scratch on the left side where Thomas had carved his initials when he was 12. I walked toward it, or I thought I walked toward it. Maybe I only reached out in my mind, I don't know. I saw a hand resting on the chair, a plain gold ring, a small scratch across the top, my mother's ring. I heard her say, "You put too much salt in the soup again." I almost laughed. Then I said, "You're still complaining." And I heard myself laugh through the tears. That was Ruth. Even in my memory, she had an opinion about the soup. The room did not become a perfect place. There was no long speech from her. No explanation of heaven, just the ring, the chair, the sentence about the soup. Then I saw Thomas near the doorway, raising one eyebrow the way he did whenever he thought I was being dramatic. "Don't start," I told him. That was all I could say. And then I saw Michael. He was standing near the kitchen window. I recognized him before I saw his face. It was the way he leaned slightly to one side because of an old injury in his knee. It was the way his hands rested at his waist. It was the way he looked toward the rain instead of at me. I said his name, Michael. He turned. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to ask everything. Where have you been? Do you miss me? Did you see the dog? Did you know I kept your shirt? Did you hear me when I talked to you in the car? All of those questions were there, but before I could say them, Jesus spoke. "I am the resurrection and the life." This time I did not hear it as a sentence from a funeral. I heard it as an answer to the fear that love had disappeared. Not an answer that explained every detail, an answer that gave the fear somewhere to go. I looked at Michael again. He smiled, but not in the way people smile in paintings. It was the crooked smile he used when he knew I was about to say something stubborn. I started crying. "I don't want to go back," I said. Jesus said, "You are not going back alone." Then I heard the chair scrape the floor. The kitchen light came back into focus. My hand was still on the table. The pen was still under the chair. The phone screen was dark. And I was alone in the kitchen. At least I was the only person I could see. I stayed at the table until the coffee maker clicked on for morning. That sound brought me back. I looked around the kitchen. The chair was empty. Michael's shirt was still hanging over it. The phone still had 11% battery, and the Bible was still open to John chapter 11. Nothing had changed the way I wanted it to. Michael had not come home. I was still grieving, but I was not asking the same question. For years I had asked, where are they? After that night, I asked, where have I placed my hope? I still wanted to know whether Michael remembered me. I still wanted to know if I would recognize him. I did not have a perfect answer, and I would not pretend I had received a private doctrine about heaven. Jesus had brought me back to himself, to the words, I am the resurrection and the life. When I opened 1 Thessalonians 4 again, I finally understood that grieving with hope does not mean do not grieve. I could miss Michael, cry for my mother, and say Thomas's name while still trusting Jesus. A week later, I called Linda. I almost hung up before she answered. I don't know how to explain what happened, I said. You don't have to explain it perfectly, she said. I told her about the chairs, the ring, and Michael by the window. I left out some details because they still felt private or uncertain. When I finished, she asked, what are you going to do with it? I looked at the kitchen window. The curtains had been closed for 3 days. So I said, I guess I'll open the curtains. That was the first thing. It sounds almost ridiculous, but I opened them. Sunlight came through the glass, and I saw fingerprints on the window. Michael used to complain about those. He said, I cleaned the inside, but never the outside. He was right. Don't tell him I said that. I made soup that afternoon using my mother's recipe. I put in too much salt. I did it again. For a second, I felt angry. Then I heard Ruth's voice in my memory saying, you never measure anything. I smiled. I also cried into the soup, which made the whole thing worse, so I had to add water. That is what healing looked like for me. Not a shining moment where everything felt fixed. It looked like opening a curtain, ruining soup, and making one phone call to a woman who understood what it meant to sit in a house that had become too quiet. The Bible says there will be a day when God wipes away every tear, and death, mourning, crying, and pain will be no more. For a long time, I thought that promise was asking me not to cry today. Now I hear it differently. Jesus was not asking me to pretend my tears were gone. He was promising that my tears would not have the final word. That is a very different thing. I still have the old phone. The battery barely holds a charge, but I keep it in the drawer. I still cannot remember the end of that sentence. I used to think forgetting it meant I was losing Michael. Now I see it differently. I loved him because of the life we shared, not because I could remember every unfinished sentence. I cannot prove what I saw. I cannot tell you that my experience answers every question about heaven. But I can tell you what it changed in me. I no longer believe I have to choose between remembering the people I love and continuing to live. Sometimes hope looks like sitting on the kitchen floor and saying, Jesus, I don't know. Sometimes it looks like opening the curtains while still wanting to stay in the dark. If you are listening while missing someone, I do not know every detail of your story. But if all you can say today is, Jesus, I am hurt, that is still a prayer. He is not asking you to perform strength for him. Psalm 34 says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Tonight, that closeness may not feel like a voice or a vision. It may feel like enough strength to make one phone call, let someone sit beside you, or get through the next hour. That counts too. Jesus, for the person listening right now who is missing someone they love, please meet them in the place they are afraid to talk about. Be close to the one who lost a husband or a wife. Be close to the one who lost a mother, a father, a brother, or a sister. Be close to the parent who still looks toward the bedroom door. Be close to the person who lost a baby and does not know what words to use. You know the names they are carrying. You know the memories they are trying not to lose. Please give them enough strength for today, not a lifetime all at once. Remind them that grief is not proof that their faith has failed. Remind them that their tears are seen, and when they cannot feel hope, hold hope for them until they can breathe again. We trust you because you are the resurrection and the life. Amen. If there is someone you are missing, you can write only their first name in the comments. You do not have to explain the whole story. And if you need prayer, write pray for me. Someone reading your name may be carrying a similar loss, and for a moment you will not be grieving alone. But after that night, one question stayed with me. I had begun to understand where my hope belonged. I had begun to understand that Jesus is not asking me to explain every mystery of heaven before I can trust him. But I still did not understand what happens to the soul between death and resurrection. Where does the soul go? What does the Bible actually say? And what should we believe when people give us confident answers that Scripture itself does not clearly give? That was the next question I had to bring to Jesus, and that is where the next story begins.